Welcome to Women Finding Clarity, the podcast that ignites your inner power and guides you on a journey to uncover the boundless potential of the universe in life and in business. I'm Pascale Cook-Fernandez, your host and life transformation coach. Join me each week as we align our energies, elevate our businesses, and thrive in every aspect of life. In each episode, we dive deep into topics like the secrets of raising your vibration, crafting irresistible offers, and amplifying your impact. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, this podcast is your compass to navigate the realms of limitless success. If you are ready to align your energy, elevate your business, and truly thrive, subscribe to Women Finding Clarity now and get ready to embark on a life-changing journey. Until next time, stay empowered and keep seeking clarity. And remember, the universe is abundant and success is your birthright. Let's align, elevate, and thrive together, one conversation at a time. Hello, and welcome to Women Finding Clarity. I'm your host, Pascale Cook-Fernandez. Okay, so I have to be vulnerable for a moment and share with you that I started going back to the gym 3 weeks ago. It has been a long time since I went on a regular basis. I stopped going routinely when I got COVID back in March of 2020. And until now, had zero interest or motivation to go back. But I did. And now I just felt blah and I couldn't get out of my own way. But I'm celebrating that even though I didn't feel like going, I knew that by going back to the gym, it would help my mood. And it did. I woke up this morning with fresh energy and I've had a fantastic day. All of this to say, what are you doing for yourself in the way of self-care or self-improvement? How can taking some time to reflect on where you could use some intentional care change the way that you're showing up in your day-to-day? The idea of reflection is no stranger to my guest this evening. Megan Mary is a dream worker that specializes in the analysis of women's dreams to promote transformative personal growth and enlightenment. Founder of Women's Dream Analysis, the Women's Dream Enlightenment podcast, and the Women's Dream Collective, she is an intuitive, introvert, mystic, and author. After being diagnosed with 3 chronic illnesses, she experienced a spiritual awakening. She now works with women all over the world, offering dream interpretation, transformative journeys, and enlightened guidance. She lives in Idaho with her rock star drummer husband and their 2 cats. Without further ado, welcome Megan Mary. Megan, welcome to Women Finding Clarity.
Thank you, Pascale. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm so interested in what you do, and I'm so interested in my own dreams. And so, it's just such a beautiful career that you've made for yourself.
Oh, awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, of course. So, one of the things that we talk about here is how you've turned your life's PhD into a profitable business. And so, as we're getting started, I'd love to hear what brought you to studying dreams.
Yes. So it started when I was very young, of course, because my fascination with dreams has its basis there. When I was a child, I would have wonderful flying dreams that were just amazing. And I would also have recurring nightmares. And both of them just fascinated me. I wondered what they meant, why I was having them, why I was spending so much time in this place that wasn't the quote unquote real world. And I was really fascinated by everything that was unseen, everything mystical and paranormal, and everything that really kept me questioning. And so I did the usual thing that most teenagers do. And I looked into dream dictionaries and I tried to figure out, what they meant, but they didn't really answer the question for me. And so it wasn't until I was an adult and then I was dealing with a lot of medical problems And I had sort of one of those dark nights of the soul where I realized that I had to do a lot of inner healing, and that was going to have to come from me, not just the medical community. And so I started meditating. And when I started doing that, I really opened up a part of my existence and subconscious that had laid dormant for quite some time, and received the call that I urgently had to start doing this work to help other women. And it wasn't something I easily accepted because, of course, anytime we get those sort of uh, guidance, we're not necessarily ready for it. So, I had to do a lot of work to get to that point. But once I started doing that, I really did start to see my dreams change as a result of that. The more that I changed my life to address that calling, the more my dreams started changing, and really realized that this is such a key part of our existence, and that it really is a portal, I believe, to spiritual intelligence and so much more. And that was what I had to spread the word.
Yeah. So, is there anything that you did before this where you were like, oh, I worked in corporate or,
Yes.
something that's totally different, but here
Yes.
you are now?
Yes. What you said. I worked in corporate. Yes. And doing digital marketing. So I've ever since the beginning of the internet, I've been creating web pages and websites and marketing them and doing all that kind of stuff. And being a very analytical person, I was very drawn to how the internet worked and how you would program it on the back end, and then it would mysteriously look this way on the front end. And I really kind of taught myself that from the very beginning, and so that was always my career. But it wasn't really, I didn't think it had anything to do with each other until I realized that I actually could use all of that, everything that I'd learned, to spread the word about my spiritual awakening and help other women to spread the word about the spiritual gifts they were discovering as a result of their awakening. And then it kind of all made sense.
Yeah. And I love how you said that because it works in both worlds. What you input on the back end is what shows up on the front end. And it's that way with spirituality, isn't it? And
Yes.
I'm assuming in listening to your transformation that it was that way for you too. It was more, what are you programming into your subconscious and what work are you doing that's making the outcome different?
Yes, and I love that metaphor actually, and it's just kind of organically came about.
Yeah.
But yes, it's true because I feel that the back end, right, of the coding is sort of the shadow, and it's all of that foundational information that gets put in there that then really determines what the front end looks like.
Yeah, I love that. I've never heard anybody say anything like that before. It really does paint such a clear picture. And honestly, I just feel like story after story after story is like you, like this is what I did. And then I had this awakening and this transformation. And then I realized I can help other women. And so now
Yes.
this is what I do. And I use all of that.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's what I based my podcast on when I started it was, yeah, tell me your story and what happened to you and now what you've learned about yourself and now what you're doing with it. And it really, I think that there's an awakening happening now to so many people in the world where this is happening over and over again. And the other interesting part to my background is that my degrees are actually in English literature. So I also thought that was something that had nothing to do with this or that. And then I realized that my love of story and my love of analysis makes perfect sense with dreams because dreams are stories.
Yes. Yes. So I too have a dream interpretation book and I love it. And at the same time, I'm like, there's got to be more to it than this, right? So, what is the difference between just going to Barnes and Noble or your local bookstore and getting a dream interpretation book and what you do?
Yes, it's very different because it's based on the dreamer. So the whole basis of the method that I use draws out the meaning from your subconscious versus finding it out in the world somewhere in a cultural or philosophical or sociological trope or archetype or whatever it might be. Instead of looking that direction, we look inwards and say, okay, what does this symbol mean to you, this object? What is the significance of the landscape of your dream, the placement, the people? They're all coming from your subconscious and your life experience. So why wouldn't the meaning then also?
Yeah, that makes total sense. And so, how do you work with people? Do you work one on one? Do you work in small group? Is it, just like one off sessions? Is it, okay, let's dig in for 6 weeks? What does that look like?
It's a multitude of things. Yes. So I can do the 1 hour session where you get the taste of it. You bring me a dream and we walk through it. And it's similar to what a session sounds like on my podcast because I do live dream interpretations on there. I also do live events on the Insight Timer app where there'll be about 100 women coming from all over the world. And it's a one way chat. So it's not as easy and it doesn't get as in depth, but women bring their dreams and we have a dream circle talk. I also do what I call dream journeys, which are a series of 4 sessions where you get to meet with me over a period of time so you can see the threads and the patterns in the dreams. And then I also have a 90-day program where we work together very closely for 90 days. You have access to me all the time, and we meet more times. And then I also provide you with some of the dream integration techniques that I offer, which include sound frequency healing and meditation. So I create a custom meditation for you based on dreams of your choice with custom visualization and affirmations based on what we're trying to achieve with that dream wisdom, and then overlay solfeggio sound frequencies to help you integrate that wisdom as part of your healing.
I had no idea this was so involved. This is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have to say, I meant to say it a few minutes ago, but you were saying that you used to do the website, la la la, all that kind of stuff. Your website's beautiful.
Oh, thank
And
you. I do
so
still do it, obviously. Yes.
yeah,
And those
obviously. So
services
I'm
are
like, she
still
needs to
available.
know that
Yes.
her website is
Oh,
beautiful.
thank you
She
so
does a
much.
great job.
Thank you so much.
Um, and I love that it's purple because for me, as an
Ah,
energy healer, that's the crown chakra, right? And so I love that higher realm of connection.
I love that. I love that you noticed that because that was very much the full on color scheme that I wanted to make the whole thing. And it really was all the whole thing I feel was just spiritually guided. And so it was very much coming from that area, right? That aspect of just channeling that all that information and as well as just the path that I was going down in terms of that because I didn't even listen to podcasts before I started this and then I got the download direction that you are going to start a podcast and so I mean just all of it was happened very rapid fire very urgently and I just ran with it as fast as I could.
I love it. It's having that inner trust, isn't it? Of knowing, okay, this is a legitimate download and it's my next step. I need
Yes.
to pay attention and get moving.
Yes, it's taking the action because we all get those downloads. We all get those little light bulb moments, but it's taking the action and saying, you know what, this is a seemingly crazy idea, but I'm going to do this. And I'm not just going to do this next year or next month. I'm going to start it today. And that's where that really inspired action comes from.
I love that because I very much am a person like, oh, I feel so inspired to do this. All right, I'm just going to do it. I don't go and do a lot of research. I'm just like, let's get going. And that is kind of how the podcast started for me in the first place. And so I love that that's how it started for you too.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never heard your podcast. What is the name of it?
It's called Women's Dream Enlightenment. And it is stories of women's spiritual awakening, as well as women come on and share their dreams with the world. And I interpret them on the show. And we just have very deep discussions like we're having now about our path in life, our our consciousness, our how we find clarity, right? And the ways that we find healing as well.
Yeah. I will tell you that I used to have a dream very frequently. And it was this dream where I could almost levitate and fly, but I was right above the ground and I could go higher if I wanted to, but usually I was pretty low and it felt so good. I never wanted to wake up. I wanted to stay in
Mm-hmm.
that place where I could just fly. I didn't have to walk, I could just fly. Let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I used to have amazing flying dreams. And I also had struggling flying dreams. It's hard to explain, but where you really can't take off and you're struggling, almost like you're swimming, but you're not getting there and that kind of thing. So, you know, part of the way that I look at dreams is through a very metaphorical lens, because I do believe that they are stories. And so I always look at the setting, the landscape that it's taking place, and the action. So what is it that you're able to do or not able to do or trying to do? What is it that someone else is doing, if there's anyone else there? And also just the symbols, the objects. I also look at the elements, earth, air, fire, water, and numbers and colors. There's so many things. There's so many small details that people won't write down, and they won't even mention them really until you start talking. And then they'll say, well, now that we're talking about it, you know what? It really reminded me of this. Aha, now we're getting somewhere.
Interesting. So I've never had the like, I'm trying to fly dream. I've had the dreams multitudes of times where I'm trying to walk, and it's almost like my feet are dragging, like I'm dragging my toes, trying to pull them forward and walk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not a fan of that one.
Yes, I've had that too. Yes. And that's, if you think about that just as a metaphor, it's very much the difficulty in moving forward, right? Or perhaps something weighing you down and keeping you from moving forward, or perhaps part of yourself keeping you from moving forward. And so it's really unearthing and peeling back that onion of what is that. And sometimes we can get at that by looking at the other elements in the story.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now thinking back, I'm like, oh, I couldn't really tell you much about it, but I would imagine that you really encourage people to keep a dream journal and just write it
Yes.
all down.
Yes, 100%. As much as possible. I mean, I realize that it can be overwhelming if you're a high recall person like myself. But as much as possible, or when you're trying to do the work, to really put it down in as much detail as possible. And that's why I have the template. So it gives you boxes to really jog your memory of, okay, well, who was there? What happened? What was the weather like? Have you seen this place before? Is it someplace you're familiar with? And if so, was it the same or was it different? And how was it different? Or was it someplace you've never been? And all those different types of uh, probing questions can really get you thinking, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about it until you asked, but
Yeah. And it is, so much of that lives in our subconscious until someone wakes it up. We don't even
yes,
realize it's there.
yes.
Yeah, that's subconscious, man.
It's tricky.
It's tricky. It can get us every time.
Hmm.
So, how long have you been doing dream interpretation?
I think I've only been doing it in this capacity for a year now, but prior to that, I feel possibly lifetimes, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
one of those, because I say spiritual awakening, but it really was a spiritual remembering. It was this wasn't a new thing. It was more like a coming back home to myself type thing. Like, yeah, okay, I that's the inner knowing. I know that there's so much more about why this is happening than I can access in this 3D reality this time around.
Yeah. It's amazing. I remember, and I talk about this on the podcast, so I won't go too deeply into it, but when I first started learning about energy healing, and it just was so very scary. I felt like it was wrong. I felt, because of how I was brought up and religious beliefs and all of that kind of stuff. And the more I learned about it, it was just like what you just said. Like it felt like a coming home. Like, yes, this feels good. Yes, this is something that I know. It feels familiar, even though it's brand new. And then when I became attuned to Reiki, it was literally like, I don't know, like I'd been doing it my whole life.
Yes.
And
And that's,
now,
yeah,
like you
that's when
say,
you know
probably
you're,
lives.
yeah, exactly. And that's when you know you're aligned, right? Because you feel like you have to, even if you don't want to. And then when you do, you're like, yeah, I can't explain it, but this is it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So tell me an example, like tell me a story of maybe a client you've worked with. And I know I'm totally putting you on the spot here. But tell me one of your favorite experiences with a client.
Mm-hmm. Well, I recently just had an episode where I call it like a dream session, and it was um, a, a woman who shared a recurring dream that she always had. And she called, I always ask everyone to give their dream a title. So when you first starting to write it down, if it was a little short movie, for example, what would you name it? And she named it The Big Wave. And for her, she shared a number of different versions of this dream over different parts in her life. But for her, it was always an indicator that there was some big change coming. And so there were different outcomes based on what was happening in her life. In one instance, she might be trying to save one of her children. In another instance, she was driving a roller coaster. There were many different scenarios. And overall, what really can make a difference when you're looking at those dreams is, are you feeling, what's the emotion? So are you feeling overwhelmed and drowned, or are you feeling empowered? And that was how she was feeling. Every time she was having that, she would feel empowered. Like, this isn't going to stop me. I'm going to save the day. I'm going to drive the roller coaster. And I said to her, isn't it interesting that you were driving the roller coaster? Because you don't drive a roller coaster. And she said, oh my God, you're right. And so I said, the driving is always an indication that you are taking the reins, right? That you are feeling in your agency, that you're have that confidence to control the trajectory and the direction of your life. And even though it may seem tumultuous, you're still in the driver's seat. And so there's so many layers to that dream, but that's just a snippet of what we discussed.
Yeah, that's really cool that, you pulled that out from there that she was driving the roller coaster. And how empowering for her to know
Mm-hmm.
that, sure, life can be a roller coaster, but I'm still in the driver's seat.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can
Because
see
I
how
feel
that's
like,
just, sorry.
oh, no, no, sorry. I feel like we have a tendency to lean more towards we're out of control.
Right.
Yeah, that's amazing for her. That I'm excited for her. I feel happy for her. So, really cool. Now, I will tell you one recurring dream that I always had until I don't know, just the last few years probably, is I always saw an airplane crash. I
Mm.
wasn't in the plane, I saw it crash.
Mm-hmm.
What the
Mm-hmm.
heck?
Well, there's a number of things that you can look at in terms of past lives, but when we're just going to look at the metaphor of a story itself, we have to look at the whole thing. So unlike a dictionary where you just look up plane and then you look up variation, crash, we really want to know, where were you? And what was the scenario? Did it look like a place that you have been before? Or was it different? And was it a place you've never been before? And then what happened before that happens? What happens after that happens? What do you do when that happens? What are your emotions that you're experiencing when you see that happen? How do you feel when you wake up? All those things are going to change the scenario, because somebody could say, well, I had a dream last night that my car was stolen. And somebody else could say, oh, so did I. But then you start asking them all of the premise and the people and everything else, that it's totally different dream.
Yeah, that makes total sense. For me, it's always been like I can see it and it's coming down, and then I lose it behind the trees or I lose
Hmm.
it behind the houses. And then I hear it and I see
Mm-hmm.
the flames come up and then I run. Like I
Okay.
run to go help.
Oh, okay. So so when you said and then I run, I'm thinking away, right? But you
Ah,
say I run to go help.
yeah.
This is why it's important that I don't put words in your mouth, because what you're going to say is never what I think you're going to say. And then what it is, it tells us everything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. Do people just tell you their dreams all the time? Like, yeah.
Yes, which is fine. I mean, because who else can they take? That's part of the thing, is that dream sharing just isn't part of an accepted part of our culture, at least Western culture anyway. It is in some other cultures in the world. And so it's really trying to spread that word about dream appreciation so that people understand, yeah, these are important, and we should be sharing them. We shouldn't be embarrassed or feel uncomfortable or be ashamed because we don't have control over the dream content. It should be something that we feel that we have a place to hold that space to share it.
Yeah. Have you ever taken mediumship training or anything?
I have not. No.
Okay.
Haven't taken any training. I do feel that I intrinsically have a lot of um, connections. I have a lot of the clair abilities. I have a lot of the other things just kind of organically happening. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, the reason I ask is because I'm wondering, in your opinion, what's the difference between a dream and a visitation?
yes. Right. And so that's something else that I work with in the dream work that I do, because that was one of my earlier experiences as well, was a very real visitation dream. And a lot of people that have them really say that they're very different from the other dreams. And you can kind of tell when it's not a story dream. It still can have story elements to it, but many times when you have that visitation dream, that person just shows up and they're right there and they're like, I gotta tell you something.
Yeah.
And so you really can, I think, tell the difference. But that's part of the reason that I feel that dreams are a portal to the spirit world. And that's the other reason I call myself a mystic, because I'm not taking the traditional Freudian or Jungian, even though there's like Jungian influence, obviously. I'm not taking that traditional psychoanalytic route, because I feel that there is a much more spiritual aspect to dream work that isn't talked about. And for me, I feel that we're spirits first and human body second. And so when we dream, we go into a different brainwave state. And I feel that state is equivalent to being in a different realm. And I feel that realm is where there are other spirits all the time as well. And so I really feel like it's possible to communicate future and past, because there is no time space, well, the time space continuum, let's call it. There is no linear restrictions when it comes to the dream world. And so there very much is an opportunity in that dream space to receive information from, let's call it, the other side, but it's really just behind the veil, right?
Right. Yeah. It's really just what's behind the curtain that you can't see with your two eyes. You really just need your third eye, right?
Yes, correct.
Amazing. So I know the answer to my question before I even ask it, but have you astral traveled?
Yes.
I knew it. Of course.
Yeah, it's just part of really sometimes when you're just curious about dream work, you don't have to be an expert because this is just part of our innate existence, right? It's tapping into it and understanding it takes some dedication, but many people just say, well, I do lucid dream anyway, and I didn't even try, right? So there's just so many things that we might be already capable of that we just don't realize. And that's very much like our intuition, right?
Yeah. What's your feeling about um really, I don't want to say planning your dreams or manifesting your dreams, but really just, can you make yourself have a particular dream?
You can. And it is what you said. It's dream manifestation, or some people call it dream incubation. And it's really setting an intention to enter into a certain dream scenario. And it can be used in a healing modality if you have a an unpleasant dream, for example, and you wake up from that unpleasant dream and consciously decide to re-enter it and change the scenario. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is that you want to produce a certain type of storyline or a certain type of dream. And the other is that you want to solve a problem for yourself. So maybe you have a challenge that you're going through. Perhaps you're a writer and you're experiencing writer's block, or you're trying to come up with a unique way to rearrange your house, or whatever it is. And you go to sleep thinking about that question. And with that power of intention, you can very well influence the content of your dreams.
Hmm. And you better be ready to write it down as soon as you wake up, right? So you don't forget it.
Right, because you might wake up and say, well, that doesn't answer my question. I don't get how that tells me what it. So that's where the decoding comes in.
Okay. So, do you have any tips about how to remember your dreams if you're a person who doesn't necessarily ever remember?
Yes. So one of them is keep a dream journal. And if you're not remembering them, just start writing in a journal. And then also, when you wake up, start to create a habit of pausing. So, right when you wake up, before you go about your day and jump out of bed, give yourself a moment, almost like a meditative moment, to think backwards. And it's kind of like when you walk into a room and you lose your train of thought and you forget, what did I come in here for? Or what was I just had that idea in my head and I was going to write it down. You have to stop and think back. And that's what you create a habit of doing when you wake up. Now, it might not appear immediately. So you have to give it a minute and you have to focus and think, what was it that I was just looking at, listening to, talking to somebody about, experiencing? And eventually you're going to get one little hit, one little idea about what it was. Then you have to focus on that thing and repeat it over and over and over in your head until you start to reveal backwards the rest of it. So you're probably going to remember it backwards. You're going to say, "Oh yeah, and before that this happened, and before that this happened." And that's why sometimes I'll tell people, write down the first thing you remember at the bottom of the page, because as you start to remember it, you can write it up the page and get that chronological account backwards.
Love that. And I've never heard anyone say that before, but it makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that was a hot tip. Hot tip. So I
Yes.
know we're coming close to the end, and I always like to ask guests if they have anything that they would like to offer listeners.
Yes. So I have the rest of my tips in my Women's Guide to Dream Decoding course, and that is on my website. And so I have offered your podcast listeners a discount there. And you can also go to my website and book a free 30-minute discovery call with me. And when you sign up for my newsletter, you will be able to download the free Dream Mirror, which is my method, journal template. And it basically is a one sheeter that gives you boxes, that gives you prompts for things to start to remember when you're writing down your dream. And I'll also ask you to give it a title. And so that'll give you a kickstart into using my method. And then please get in touch and share your dreams with me, and I'll walk you through your journey.
I love that because sometimes we have intentions. Okay, I want to start keeping a dream journal. I want to start remembering. I'm going to start doing it. And then we have no idea how to get started. So that just makes it so much easier. It's like, okay, a one cheater, follow this, and here we go.
Yes. And that's all at womensdreamanalysis.com.
Which is in show notes. And so
Yes.
it'll be an easy click and go for people.
Yes.
Amazing. Megan, I feel like I could talk to you about this all day. I'm already like, okay, I need a session or 12.
Yes, please do.
Yeah,
Awesome.
this is amazing. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your energy and all the healing that you're doing for other women.
Thank you so much for giving me this platform to share my story. And yes, I really appreciate it.
I'd love to hear what my conversation with Megan told you about the dreams you've been having. Like she said, it's all about looking at all the parts and pieces to find the meaning. To be honest, I feel like life is like that too. For more clarity in your life or business, subscribe to Women Finding Clarity's email newsletter by visiting womenfindingclarity.com or by clicking the link in show notes. Remember, the universe is abundant and success is your birthright. Let's align, elevate, and thrive together, one conversation at a time. Good night. Thank you for being in our Women Finding Clarity community. If you're enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite listening platform and share it with someone you know so they can find clarity from the conversation as well. Remember, the universe is abundant and success is your birthright. Let's align, elevate, and thrive together, one conversation at a time. See you next week.